Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Coming at you, what's this? Bleary-eyed. I can see the time. About 4:30 on Wednesday afternoon. I can't really see straight at the moment. Have not had an opportunity to take a nap today after a 7:30 wake up. Who am I getting 7:30 wake up? Well, I was up at 6:50 today. Not ideal. But you know what? If the Knicks could go into Madison Square Garden and whoop up the Pacers like they did, I can tough out a podcast, even if it's with this guy of The Athletic and of Katz and Shoot fame. And of more recently of NBA Paint fame, Fred Katz. Hello, sir.
That's like one of my favorite Twitter accounts of all time.
It's such a great thing.
Is there anything that's more up my alley? Just adorable Microsoft Paint illustrations of the dumbest, silliest, goofiest puns on NBA player names you could possibly find. And the puns are great.
They're great.
They're just great. They're all 10 out of 10s. They're all hilarious. But I was honored to get a Precious no shoe in there. Precious lost the shoe.
Do you keep track of all your old puns?
No. Oh my God. No. There's not a database large enough to store all that information.
Hold on. I like how you looked at me with such disdain. Like the thought of you keeping track of old puns would be, that's like so beneath you.
It's not that it's beneath me. It's that my puns are so voluminous that it would be impossible to keep track of.
Wow.
It's like, you know what it's like? I'm not going to say it's like asking LeBron to keep track of his points because I'm not putting myself on the same page as LeBron. What I'm going to say is it's like asking J.R. Smith to keep track of his heat checks.
Okay.
It's like
you could have got a lot of directions there. That's a good one.
They're heat checks, you know?
Yeah.
He's just throwing them up in the moment. And I throw them out and then they either hit the net or they don't.
Part of the magic of the heat check is it is as in the moment of a thing as you could have, much like your puns. Anyway, Precious no Shua. That's it. It was a good one. And you've had a lot of good ones, but that was up there. All right, let's talk about this game. Let's talk about this team. Let's talk about this series. Obviously, let's talk about the Pistons. I don't even know if there's anything to talk about with the Pistons right now, which is like a first. So we'll think of something.
Front office search.
That's true.
He reportedly got declined. The Bucks reportedly declined permission to talk to him. They dropped from the worst record in the league to the 5th pick in the draft, the second year in a row,
which is high.
You know what I will say?
What?
Everybody's saying, "Oh, the Pistons, terrible luck. They had the worst luck of the lottery." You know what this shows? Shows that people just don't consider probabilities at all in the way that they should. The Pistons' most likely scenario was to get the 5th pick.
Yes.
Their most likely scenario. There was like a 52% chance the Pistons were going to get the 5th pick. If you had to bet leading into the lottery, you would be insane to not bet on the Pistons getting the 5th pick. There was like a 52% chance they'd get the 5th pick and like a 14% chance they'd get the 1st pick. You take the 5th pick every time over that. This is what happens. This is why the lottery exists. The Pistons didn't receive terrible luck. They just lost a lot of games and then they lost the lottery too.
And yet there were some teams that had very slim chances to move up, obviously much slimmer chances than the Pistons that did move up, which goes to show you how in the NBA, sometimes things happen according to plan and they go chalk, and other times things happen that are kind of outside the realm of what you expect, which brings us to this series because on paper...
Good transition. That was like a transition out of Andrew Claudio heaven right there. Just like Fred is deviating. He's talking about the lottery. He's talking about the Pistons. He's going on a random tangent about some impassioned thing nobody else cares about. Bring him back to earth, John. Bring him back. Lead him the way.
I didn't even finish the transition yet. Hold on. But here's the question. So on paper, this series is exactly where it should be. We are through 5 games. The home team that has had 3 games has won all 3 of those games. The road team that has had 2 games has won those 2 road games. There have been some close games. There have been some blowouts. So again, if you're looking at it, I guess from a 10,000 foot view, this is as chalk of a series as you can possibly have. And yet, what I want to start with you is like, not has this series given us a lot of unexpected stuff, because I think the answer is pretty obvious, like it has. But 5 games into this thing, and I was just going back and rereading your column that you did with Eric Neem, in which you guys asked and answered 5 big questions going into Game 5. Like, how much have you been surprised by, like genuinely surprised by, with the caveat that there have been some unknowns, like, you know, OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson going down with injuries?
I mean, look, I picked Knicks in 6 coming into the series.
As did I.
And I think sometimes when you say Knicks in 6 or Knicks in 5, and then the Knicks lose 1 or 2, people are like, oh, momentum's on the other side now. It's like my friend Royce Young, who covered the Thunder for a long time and now works for them, used to always say this. Whenever fans would freak out and be like, oh, the Thunder lost the game, because Thunder fans have a very college football like mentality. And so it's like, you know, you lose, Oklahoma loses a game, it's like, oh, season's a failure. And so I think sometimes that gets applied to the Thunder, and the Thunder would lose a playoff game and Royce would just respond, what was your pick for the series? And they would say Thunder in 6. And Royce would say, you realize they have to lose twice in order for it to be Thunder in 6, right?
Yeah.
Like they have to lose twice. You might want to freak out every time, but like they got to lose. I think the way that they lost in Game 4 was probably the most surprising thing. Not that they lost, but the way that they lost. The fact that they just looked nothing like themselves. That was the most surprising thing. And I'm not going to say that I was shocked by them showing up in Game 5 and looking completely like themselves, because I considered it a total possibility. Because my answer whenever anybody asks me, and a gazillion people did on my podcast and in that piece that you referenced that I wrote with Eric Neem, and when people would ask me to the side and friends would hit me up and people in the league would hit me up and they'd be like, you think they're going to come out with energy? I'd be like, I genuinely don't know. If it was any other team, I would say, no, I don't think they're going to come out with energy. This team plays insanely hard. It's part of their identity. And it's absolutely concerning that they came out in Game 4 with no energy. And I didn't think they failed to play hard in that game. Because that means that they had stuff to give. They didn't give. It just seemed like they had nothing to give. Like you couldn't reasonably ever accuse this group of not playing hard. And so if it felt like they had nothing to give, it was just like, oh man, they have nothing to give. And then I kept coming back to, this group is so insanely resilient. And how many times have they been written off for a gazillion different reasons? If they're going to go out, they won't go out like that. You know, eventually they'll go out, but it won't be like that. It'll be with a bloodied face and a dislocated shoulder and a broken kneecap, and and they'll lose by 7 with all those circumstances. Like that's, if they're going to go out, that's how they're going to go out. And so I just kept coming back to that overriding character trait of them. So I was not necessarily, I didn't anticipate it to be a 30-point blowout. But I think probably the most surprising part of the series to me was just Game 4 in general, just them coming out and just looking like nothing I've ever seen this team look like. And hey, they're 1 win away from making it not matter at all.
They are 1 win away from making it not matter at all. And like, maybe it's weird because maybe, I know you have a catalog of NBA games in your head, just like you more than me. Over the years, like the one that comes to my mind is, what did the Grizzlies beat the Warriors by like 50 some odd points in the playoffs a couple years, and route to Golden State's winning the championship, I believe. Like that happened. There's been other examples of that. Like teams get blown out sometimes and then they come back and then they win games. So maybe we should not have been surprised, but to your point, and like a bunch of people asked me the same question, like, what are we going to get in game 5? And I would kind of like look off to the side and like shrug. And I just like, because I went through the exact same thought process as you. It's like, on one hand, I know this team, and if anybody could summon the energy, it's them. But like, I don't know what, like, have we ever seen a 180 like that? I mean, you were in the Garden last night. I was there as well. I was not there in game 4. You were there in game 4, right?
I've been at everything.
You've been at everything. Okay. So having been in person in the last 2 games, can you recall a team coming out looking that different in like a particular area like that?
You know, Eric Name and I were actually having this conversation at the game last night, not to make Eric the star of the episode. But Eric is covering the Pacers for us at The Athletic right now. And normally he's our Bucks beat writer. And Eric does an amazing job. I think he's one of the best beat writers in the whole business. He's incredible. And he's equally as nerdy as us. Like all he wants to do is just like talk ball at all times. We hung out all day on Saturday between games 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. And I think we talked about basketball for 8 consecutive hours. It was uncouth. It was like, this is why we can't make other friends. And what Eric brought up, which was a great one, was that 2021 Bucks Nets series that famously ended in the game 7 with Kevin Durant's foot in the line. They had to go to overtime. But game 2 of that series, the Nets win game 1 of that series in Milwaukee. Oh, no, sorry, in Brooklyn. The Nets win game 1
of that series. Pulling it up right now, just so we have it.
And game 2, the Bucks lost by 40.
39, yes. I'm looking at it right now.
39. And they come back the next game and they hold the Nets to 83 points.
And win only 3, which should be noted.
But that was the Nets. That was like,
yes.
That was when the Nets were,
yep.
When people were like, oh, the Nets are the favorites. The Nets are the favorites. And they held them to 83 and they go on. And obviously they end up winning the series in 7. And to me, that was like, I remembered that game. It was a massive defensive turnaround holding that Nets team. That was an epic offensive team, and the Nets were dealing with injuries at the time, but holding them to 83 a game after losing by 39, that was one of them. And obviously that's memorable because that Milwaukee team goes on to win the title.
Yeah.
And that's one heck of a turnaround. You fall down 0-2 and you go on to win the title. I think if one team is going to have it, I think that's it. This is it. Like they just, you know what I felt good about them? I felt good about them. I didn't think there was going to be no energy after I left the locker room before game 5. I was in the locker room. I was talking to a bunch of guys.
Can you share that? Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to share one anecdote that showed me how loose they were because I'm not going to embarrass the guy, but there was an epic fart that loosened up the locker room a lot before the game. And I'm not going to say who it was because I'm not going to embarrass the guy. That was it. And the guys were just like, they were talking about the Tibbs beach picture. I went up to Hartenstein and he thought I was going to ask him about his shoulder. And I was going to ask him about actually the Tibbs picture. And before I even opened my mouth, because he had hurt his shoulder in game 4 and he had said it was probably a pinched nerve and he was clearly feeling it. And the wonder is like, okay, he's playing, it's not on the injury report, but is it going to affect his passing with his left hand? Is it going to affect his floater? Is it obviously he seemed to be just fine, but going into the game, I was walking up to Hartenstein and I was going to ask him about the Tibbs picture actually. And he thought I was going to ask about the shoulder. And before I even opened my mouth, he just grabbed his left arm and faked being in pain and said, "Oh, they're cutting it off tomorrow, or they're cutting off in 3 days." They said I got 3 days left with the arm, and then he started grabbing it like the sleeve he was wearing on his shooting arm. He was like, "I can't even feel it; it's totally numb." And then he pointed at his shoulder and he was like, "They're gonna make the incision right here and just cut it off." And I said, "Okay, so you're fine?" He said, "I'm fine." So like, this team doesn't get in its own head. It doesn't press. It really does take putting things behind them, not as a cliche, but as a way of truly operating. And I think that's something that is extremely important to the identity of not the team. We talk about the team, but I think it's important to the identity of the people on the team. That's just how those people are from a personality standpoint. Like, let's not talk about them as players. Let's talk about them as people. That's how Isaiah Hartenstein is as a person. That's his personality. That's Jalen Brunson's personality. It's Dante DiVincenzo's personality, and so on and so forth. Josh Hart is just lets everything slide off. You can say whatever you want to Josh Hart, and he's going to be like, yep, we're going to move on. And so I think that's just kind of who they are. And it really confirmed it to me going into the locker room, especially in game 5, when I was like, okay, well, they are not tense. I'll tell you this much.
You answered a question I was going to ask you later, but I'll just put it now, which is like, do you think game 6 is it's a silly question because the answer is obviously no, but how much of a must-win game is game 6? But I was going to ask it purely more from the perspective of not like a mentality, like that they'd be feeling any pressure, but more just about the quick turnaround time, which, look, it could still be a factor, but based on what you're saying, it's like whatever happens in game 6, they're going to show up in game 7, and we can be pretty sure that they're going to be like ready to go. That said, I will ask you about the turnaround time. I wonder, like, I don't know, how would they even be thinking about it? Because they approach it one game at a time. So I guess there's probably just nothing else to say there.
It's a game 7. Like, they're also getting 2 days off before 6.
Again, which goes back to why I'm wondering, like, usually in this scenario, game 6 on the road, it's like you expect the road team to win. The road team, I believe Indiana is favored by 4.5, at least 4.5 points, if not more. So I don't know. Well, let's. Let me ask you this: what are you expecting?
You also realize there's a chance that if the Knicks, Boston, and Denver all go 6 or fewer, then the Eastern Conference like if the Knicks win on Friday and then Denver wins in 6 or fewer, or in 6, I guess, or Boston wins in 5 or 6, then the Eastern Conference Finals starts at 3:30 on Sunday after the Knicks play at potentially 8:30 on Friday.
I will be wearing all of my Timberwolves gear. When is that game? Tomorrow night, right? Yeah. Tomorrow night. So not that I have it.
Me too. And it has nothing to do with the Knicks. It has everything to do with the fact that I am flying to Indianapolis on Thursday. And I don't know when I leave if I'm supposed to pack for 2 or for 6 days. So I just have to pack for 6 days and then hope for the best.
I mean, I'm sure they have some nice laundromats in Indianapolis.
I'm just packing for 6 and hope for the best.
Okay.
I'm not risking an uncouth laundromat in Boston. I'm not risking that.
I'm sure they have nothing but uncouth laundromats in Boston. I wanted to talk about game 5 more, but since I just brought up game 6, what do you expect in game 6? If you had to put your projection cap on
that kind of sounds like a Ben Folds song. An uncouth laundromat in Boston.
I was never a fan of Ben Folds 5, but that's just me.
He had some good ones. I honestly don't remember what your question was.
It was probably a silly question. What do you expect in game 6?
I expect Tyrese Halliburton to come out with a lot more verve than he had in game 5. A lot more.
Verve in the sense of aggression?
Verve in the sense of aggression. Defensively, especially. Look, I know Halliburton is a very vulnerable defender, and the Knicks attacked him like crazy. And I'm going to have a story on that going up at some point on Thursday about how much success the Knicks offense had going at Halliburton. The Knicks put Halliburton on the backside of 22 pick and rolls in game 5. And they had not done that. So he was on the backside of 22 pick and rolls. All of them were Jalen Brunson pick and rolls. He had not been on the backside of more than 10 Jalen Brunson pick and rolls in any other game in this series. In game 4, when they just got whacked, they ran 2 pick and rolls with Halliburton defending the screen. And so I think that was something where it was like, okay, we're getting whacked. We're getting away from everything we do. And it was a mix of probably, all right, we're getting killed, don't show them stuff. And also like, it's just another bit of evidence about how unbelievably out of their sorts the Knicks were. But up until game 5,
2 or game 4 you meant?
Game 4.
Yeah, that's what,
Game 4 when they were getting killed. They ran two
Got it.
pick and rolls with Halliburton guarding the screener, which means like basically they're dragging Halliburton into the action. Yeah. They ran, I think, you know what? I actually have the numbers. I'm going to have this in my story for tomorrow, which is not yet complete.
And as you're pulling it up, I will make I think it's an obvious correlation. If it is an incorrect correlation, then please correct me. But part of the reason that they were able to do that is because they were a lot more comfortable bringing Deuce McBride into the action, because if you bring Deuce McBride into the action, obviously you have to respect him as a shooter. Whereas if you bring Josh Hart into the action, who Halliburton had been hiding on for the majority of the series, then it doesn't necessarily bear as much fruit.
Yep. So over the first 4 games of the series, they ran 28. Let me see this. Over the first 4 games of the series, they ran 23 Brunson pick and rolls with Halliburton guarding the screener. Just in game 5, they ran 22.
Oh,
so they really upped the ante there. They noticed something they like. I totally agree with you. It's about McBride. That's what the lead to my story is about, actually, about how on February 1st, in a game against the Pacers, I like how I come on here, I just give away my stories so nobody has to read them. On February 1st, in a game against the Pacers.
Because they're great stories.
Well, so in a game against the Pacers on February 1st, and people might remember that game because that was the game where Brunson was named an all-star and led the big comeback and wins it for him at the end, and then has that emotional, incredible interview with Alan Hahn on the court after the game. And the Knicks were incredibly shorthanded that night, similar to now. And Deuce McBride entered the starting lineup that night. And I believe it was his first start. It was his first start next to Brunson. I can't remember if it was his first start of the season, but it was his first start next to Brunson. To that point, they had played 12 minutes together all season. Tibbs just would not play those two together. And in the fourth quarter of that game, the score's tied at 91 with about 6 minutes to go. And Brunson calls over McBride to set a screen for him. McBride tries to kind of flatten the screen, and he comes over and he tries to change his angle. So he's setting the screen on the other side. And him and Brunson just run into each other. And they just flat out run into each other. And they like bounce off of each other as if they're almost both flopping off of each other. And then Brunson makes some crazy move and spins into the layoff and into the lane and throws up some crazy falling shot to give the Knicks the lead. That was by absolutely no means a result of the effectiveness of the Knicks pick and roll. And after that game, I went up to McBride at his locker and we were just chatting. I wasn't even interviewing him. And I asked him, like, how much do you play with Brunson in practice? Like, how much do you run alongside each other? Because normally when you scrimmage, you run drills, the starters play with starters, reserves play with the reserves. And I was curious. I was like, they had never played consequential minutes together. I was like, have they done it in drills or anything? And he said, basically never. And I was like, I could tell. He's like, it shows, right? And I said, yep. He's like, you talking about the play we ran into each other? I said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. He was like, yeah, we'll get it. Like, he's like, and he was saying to me, like, 2 high IQ players, like, we're going to get it down. It's just going to take court time together. But it seems like maybe we're going to get that now and maybe we'll get it. And there's a play pretty early in that game where McBride comes and sets a screen for Brunson and he changes angles on the screen. And it's a perfect screen. And the Pacers botch the coverage. They send 2 guys at Brunson because they don't want to switch it and put Halliburton on Brunson. McBride pops. He's open. Brunson finds him. McBride hits a 3. And they ran something like that a number of times. And it was beautiful offense. The timing was great. The screen was great. I was like, man, these two, McBride hit the nail on the head. He's like, we'll figure it out. I'm like, yeah, you're doing that in game 5 of a 2-2 playoff series. And it's winning you games. Yeah. So I think it had a lot to do with McBride in there, but not just because of spacing, but because those two have kind of learned how to play off of each other and with each other. And if they're going to put Halliburton on McBride, then I wonder exactly, what the counter is to that, because it worked really well, whether it was Halliburton on McBride, Halliburton on Burks.
All right. We're going to take a quick minute to say hi to our friends at Foreplay. What's up, Knicks fans? The other day, I was talking to 2 girls and they were telling me how into foreplay they are and how they wished They had more single guys to do it with. No, not that foreplay. We're not talking about getting teed up on the pod. I'm talking FOURPLAY, foreplay. It's an app where single friends team up and double date other single friends. It's more fun, lower pressure, and a safer way to meet new people, which is exactly why single girls love it. They do. In fact, they love it so much that they make up the majority of teams on the app, as in a 3-to-1 ratio in your favor. Look, we all know everything is better with a friend. Just ask Josh and Jalen, even if Brunson won't admit it. And with foreplay, you don't have to sacrifice bromance for romance, because it's a chance to enjoy a night out with a buddy while meeting two new people in a more social environment without any expectations. The icing on the cake, it is totally free. All right, it's game time. So head over to the App Store now and download foreplay. That's FOURPLAY, and get ready for a little 2-on-2 pickup. So I do have to correct you. McBride did not start the February 1st game.
Right. It was the first time they played together in rotation minutes. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. So I'm looking at it, and
came off the bench.
You called it as a fourth quarter thing, because in the first half of that game,
he came in and he finished. Yeah. He came in the middle, and then he finished the first half. Yeah. And then he came in and he finished 29 minutes. Yeah.
But it wasn't a ton in the first half, and it wasn't even a ton in the third quarter. It was the fourth quarter when I'm looking at it right now. Brunson played 8:41. I would guess the last 8:41, and McBride played 9 minutes of that fourth quarter. But then eventually McBride went into the starting lineup after the OG 3-game comeback. We'll get back to OG in a bit. Yeah, I mean, if you're Indy and if Indy puts Halliburton on Hart, what would, to me, because then at that point, Nembhard is going to be on McBride, correct?
Yep.
Why would the Knicks care? To me, if you're Tibbs or you're Brunson or any of these guys, isn't Halliburton or Nembhard at this point 6 of one, half dozen the other? If you're bringing either of those guys into the screening action.
No. Nembhard is no. I think Nembhard is a much better defender in those scenarios than Halliburton. Halliburton was not defending with his feet. He was defending with his hands, which I thought was really problematic. He wasn't getting back in time. He was not if you're going to hedge and recover, you got to hedge and recover, dude.
And he wasn't.
You got to go. If they put Halliburton on Hart, I would just run those pick and rolls with Hart.
So
I would keep running those. I would keep running those at Halliburton. I don't know if they're going to do that. I just wonder if they're going to do something maybe before the switch to try to before the screen to try to help. Maybe they're going to change up their coverage. Maybe they're just going to go with an aggressive. Maybe you just go with an aggressive blitz of Brunson, and you hope maybe you can get some turnovers like that. That would be true to the Pacers' identity of prioritizing getting turnovers, getting out in the run. And then also you have Halliburton at kind of the lead of your break as well, because he's the one of the guys trapping, and you might get some buckets out of that if you get turnovers. But they've been terrible in the trap this series. Part of the reason they've been terrible in the trap, though, is because they keep soft trapping, and you can't soft trap Brunson. You're just giving them numbers and not giving yourself a high enough chance at a turnover.
So two things. One, just on the trap thing, if I was them, I would absolutely sell out. And at the beginning of the game, try to go over some hard traps, because what might happen, you might generate some turnovers, you might generate some easy points, you might get your crowd all fired up, you might get the beginnings of a repeat of Game 4, even though I don't think that's the direction. But if you get the Knicks down, that's great. And hey, worst case scenario, they figure it out a few times. Okay, great. Your building's going to be crazy. It's a good group, a good building of fans. Let's say you go down by a handful or a couple of handfuls of points. It's not the end of the world. The back to the Hart thing, though. Maybe I'm missing something. What's the drawback of putting Halliburton on Hart if you're Indiana?
The drawback is that Hart is better at creating out of the short roll than McBride. So if Brunson's going to dump it to Hart can decisively go at the rim. And I think Hart is going to read like a mini half court 4-on-3 better than McBride is. And then you're at risk of like DiVincenzo corner threes.
Sure.
And maybe you would rather McBride wing threes than DiVincenzo corner threes. I mean, here's the thing. The Knicks offense is freaking good when those guys all play. And that lineup eviscerated teams in the regular season.
You quoted the stats before game 5. You had that ready.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was possible they would go to it. Tibbs is a lineup data guy, and it's not like he just looks at the lineup and is like, that's it. But he's going to look at the lineup, and if the eye test matches up with the lineup, then he'll do it. And look, it's not like they were playing nobodies when they were running that lineup out there. That lineup played well against good teams. Like that lineup ran wild against the Kings. That lineup ran wild against the Warriors in road games. They were doing it against winning teams. And part of the reason why they were plus 104 in 172 minutes during the regular season. And this is Brunson, McBride, DiVincenzo, Hartenstein. And plus 104 in 172 minutes is insane. And part of the reason for that is because they had unsustainably hot shooting. I think they shot 47% from 3, which is not going to happen. But last night, they play 15 minutes together. They shoot 30 from 3. They shoot poorly, and they're plus 5. And if they just shoot their average from 3, then that lineup is even more than plus 5.
Not only did they shoot poorly, but the freaking team that they were playing shot like, I don't know what they shot like.
Started like 9 for 14 from 3, the Pacers.
They were at one point, I forget what it was insane. They were like 60% after 3 quarters. It was nuts. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. And so I was curious to see if Tibbs was going to go forward with that lineup, but you're right. I think it's probably more of a coverage thing than a matchup thing. Benji or DJ would probably have a better answer to this than I would in terms of maybe what the best coverage would be for Halliburton there. But I have to imagine the Knicks are going to go back to it. And the first thing that comes to my mind is maybe they just try to really hard trap Brunson, because that's the thing that's most consistent with the Pacers' identity, which is, we're going to give up points and you can put us in rotation and maybe we'll get in the spin cycle, but we're going to try for turnovers and we're going to try to get out on the run after those turnovers. And if they can be successful in doing it, maybe that's something. And honestly, Halliburton is just going to have to do better defensively. Yes. Like part of the issue was, I would not say the number one issue was the coverage. I would say the number one issue was that Halliburton was not executing properly. He just wasn't defensively. And that's, not ideal for them. That's why the Knicks kept going to it.
It was not ideal to them. I mean, look, this is a Pacers starting 5. We talked about it, I think, when either we talked about it or I talked about it on one of the pods before the series started, that the defensive rating of this starting 5 was, we did talk about it. It was 107 points. It would have been led the league. It would have been better than Minnesota's league leading number. Now, that's a bit of a misnomer because you could go through a lot of, starting lineups around the league and say, well, this would be better than but it was like, it was good. And yet, and this is, I guess, my lead into like, we have to, I guess, just talk about Brunson again, because he's just doing these amazing things. Like it should not be this easy to carve them up. And Brunson took to him like a hot knife through butter in the first half last night. Second half, he cooled off a little bit, but like it was, I don't know, man. I just, again, I've run out of words for Jalen Brunson a long time ago, so I'll just toss it to you. You have anything to say about Jalen Brunson?
It was funny last night. Tibbs always says, if you ask Tibbs a question at the beginning of his press conference, he'll always kind of like get to his talking points and summarize the game. And he'll just kind of run through, be like, he's got his keywords. Isaiah was a monster. I thought it was a terrific performance. He's praising Isaiah Hartenstein. Then he goes down. Alec was huge off the bench and blah, blah, blah. And then he gets to, Jalen was Jalen. Josh was Josh. Yeah. And he always says Jalen was Jalen. And you can tell it's because he's gotten to a point where he's like, I don't know what to say. The dude's just that level every night. And so Barbara Barker from Newsday asked what I thought was a really funny, and in a lot of cases, maybe wouldn't be a good question, but I thought it was a great question. And she said, she kind of asked later in the press conference, she just says, can you just say something other than Jalen is Jalen? For real, what would can you just go a little deeper on this?
It's a great question.
This is pretty amazing. Can you just say something other than Jalen is Jalen? And Tibbs gave a really good answer.
Was that where he talked about he always, even when he does good, he wants to do better?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And it was a really good answer. And Tibbs was she capitalized on that sort of there was a connection of yeah, we know we think it's as insane as you do. We just want to hear you talk about this stuff. It's crazy. Maybe they just relinquish the switch next game because the Pacers also don't want to give up threes. Yeah. So maybe they just relinquish the switch and they're like, if Brunson wants to shoot twos against Halliburton, let him shoot twos and we'll try to get out in the break every single time we get a stop and we'll try to get threes. Maybe that's what they'll do. The Pacers have actually done a pretty solid job taking away threes in this series. It's in part because when they don't defend, even when they don't defend well, they're just giving up shots at the rim. And so teams will take that. But the Pacers will try to funnel stuff generally toward the middle. So maybe they're just like, Tyrese, we're putting you out in an island, try to force him right. Maybe there's a little bit of help coming off of Josh Hart's guy. Maybe you just double him off of Hart's guy. Or if there's a non-shooter out there, you just double off of whoever the non-shooter who plays in the perimeter. In the Precious Achua minutes, you just double off of Precious's guy every single time. Maybe that's what you do, and you don't worry about Precious. Or maybe you have, they've been having a roamer off of Precious during those times, and that was part of the reason why. The leading reason Brunson struggled was the injuries, but part of the reason why was also the spacing was just worse because Siakam could just roam off of Achua. Anyway, I got away from it. I don't know what else to say about Jalen Brunson. The dude is an incredible basketball player. He is an unbelievable player, and he's freaking amazing, man.
Okay. You've confirmed my suspicions, which is that we've all run out of things to say about Jalen.
Yeah, I got nothing. 5 40-point games in the playoffs is ridiculous. And him doing this, as I'm not a huge buy into the overarching narrative kind of guy usually, but him doing this in response to an entire national conversation about whether or not he's a 1A, and then him coming out, and even if they lose the next two, him coming out and averaging 34 points a game in the playoffs, which is what he's doing right now, dropping 40 at least 5 times in a playoff run, 39 one more time, beating the Sixers, who everybody and their mother was afraid of, and taking the Knicks to within one game of the Eastern Conference Finals with all of these injuries. Him doing this, I don't think he's doing it in response to that. I don't think he's being like, oh, this one's for Becky Hammon. I don't think that's his personality. I think he is extremely competitive, and he thrives off of doubt, as many competitors do. But I don't think it's necessarily a specific doubt. I think he is very internal with the way that he tries to get better, as opposed to external, which is what some other guys are, where they'll like Patrick Beverley is external with his motivations, right? I don't even know Patrick Beverley, and I can say with complete confidence he is external with his motivations. He looks to all the places that he was doubted. He looks to all of the haters, and he's like, this one's for the haters, I think Brunson, for the most part, is very internal with the way that he motivates himself. But him doing this amidst the season with the conversation of is he a 1A? It's not the same level, because Jokic won a title. but it's hitting the same notes as like Jokic not getting MVP with an overriding conversation of, can you win a title with Nikola Jokic, even though the guy who won has never made it past the second round? And Jokic had made it to the conference finals at that point. Can you win a title with Jokic? And then Jokic one is all time. That's one of the maybe 5 greatest individual title rounds in the history of the sport. But it hits a similar sort of note of like, the conversation is, can this guy do it? And talk about like a resounding answer in all caps. Like, yes, he can do this very clearly.
I'll add one small segment I'll tack on to the end of that, which was really very poignant. And I agree with every word of it. He did give us a taste at the end of the playoffs last year with those last 2 games against Miami, where, not to say he was bad before those 2 games. He wasn't bad. He obviously had good games.
No, he was terrible in the first round series, in the second round series against Miami. It was awful,
terrible. Yep. You're a Bears fan, aren't you? He gave us
Brian Urlacher jersey in my closet right now. I got a Matt Forte signed napkin.
Dude, Matt Forte had a couple of years where he was a big fantasy guy. Anyway,
he was good.
He was good. He gave us that taste, and it was enough where it's like, you had a lot of confidence, obviously, going into the next postseason, because like, okay, we just saw him finish, against Miami. He put up whatever he put 40 and 38, whatever those totals were, but we still hadn't seen this level, and to go to this place is just, it's storybook stuff. Okay, Andrew's telling me we have to wrap soon, so he said one more question. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna do a quick one, and then I'll ask like a real last question.
And screw Andrew. I feel like we haven't talked about enough. I feel like we have other things to discuss.
I mean, we haven't got into the lottery, which is that should be a part 2 of this episode. So, OG Anunoby, I'm giving you one chip to place, and these are your choices. I mean, we know he's not playing in Game 6. So your first option is this series. So I'll leave it open-ended. Your second option is to place it on, should they get there, one of the first 2, and this is when he would make his debut, one of the first 2 games of the next series. Again, they may not get there. And your third option would be Game 3 or later of the next series.
I'll go Game 3 or later.
Okay.
Doesn't seem like he's there yet. I don't know if the Knicks know the answer to that question, by the way. So I think in some ways it's kind of unanswerable. But based on
something why don't you think the Knicks know the answer to that question?
I just think he's still in the relatively early stages of his rehab. So like, he's not running yet, unless he started running today, and I'm unaware of it because there was no availability and I haven't spoken to anybody about it today. But I don't think he would, based on where he was at yesterday. So he's not running yet. He's not, he's got to start running, and then he's got to have a ramp up, and then they got to get it to a point where he can play like playoff minutes. And it's like, I just think it'll take some time. Like, he's not doing any contact stuff or anything like that. Not that the Knicks are practicing with contact right now, because they're playing so many minutes since the playoffs and everything. So they're not even practicing with contact. But if they were, he wouldn't be doing it. Like, he's not at that stage yet. So I'll say Game 3 would be 10 days from now. So yeah. I mean, game 2 could be as soon as 6 days from now. So I'm going to say Game 3 or later.
That's fucking. That's wild.
Knicks could really use that Denver series to go to 7.
Get
an extra 2 days.
Getting my Nickeil Alexander-Walker beanie baby. I wonder if there exists a Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Well, it wouldn't be a beanie baby. It would be like a. What do
they make beanie babies still?
I have no idea. I don't even know why that was the thing that I went to. All right, we've gone far, Fel. We do need to end soon. So here's what I'm going to end. I feel like periodically throughout the season, and definitely before the playoffs, I pestered you with annoying questions that were big picture, which I just am endlessly fascinated about. So I'm going to ask you this annoying question. which is not fair at all, but I'm going to demand that you answer it. Otherwise, you're obviously banished from the pod. How much? And you kind of answered it a little bit by what you said.
Don't test me.
There would be no pod without you, Fred. You answered it a little bit with what you said about Brunson. Like, even if they lose the next 2 games, so on and so forth, he's already done what he's done. And like, maybe that's all that matters for this franchise. But I'm just going to ask you like this. How much does what happens in the next 70, whatever, through the end of Sunday matter to this franchise?
Define matter.
You define
in terms of, I don't think it will affect how they operate.
That's a big part of it. Okay. That's a big part of it.
I don't. I think they now feel very confident in what they have from a personnel standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. I'd be shocked if Tibbs were not back next year. My colleague, Shams Charania, reported earlier today that there's already talk on an extension. He's got 1 year left after this one. And man, I mean, I guess something could change along the way, but I mean, everybody in that organization and look, there were Tibbs doubters inside the Knicks, just as there were outside the Knicks. And the ones who are just like, got to hand it to him, man. This dude has done an insane job this season. Like, I think there's an argument to be made. He's a better coach than he's ever been. I think he's grown a lot in the last 3 years, John.
Thank you for that, Fred. Appreciate that.
How much might you say he's grown, Fred Katz of The Athletic?
Oh crap! I forgot what the answer was. What is it again?
I forget it too. We're good. The acknowledgement that he's grown in the last 2 years is enough to drive him up a wall. I'm the one playing, and we have to run soon.
Yeah, I mean, I would say he's grown a ton. Like, if you look at the hype markers on the wall, he's just
it's great.
He's really made it. No, I don't think that much, if anything, will change based on the next 2 games. I really don't. I think they've seen what they need to see. That being said, I think if they lose the next 2 games, I don't think they're going to come away from this season being like, what an incredible disappointment. I think they're going to be like, that was a good season, but it is a little dissatisfying.
Yeah.
I think if they make the conference finals, I think they're going to be like roaring. I think they're going to be like, this is it. Look at this group that's in the conference finals. Look at this culture that brought this organization to the conference finals, the locker room culture. Look at the absolute, like, historically massive grand slam they hit with the Brunson signing. I mean, people were asking for a little while, is that the best free agency signing in the history of the Knicks? And I think there's a pretty damn realistic chance we're going to get to a point where we talk about it as one of the greatest free agency signings in the history of the NBA.
I'd like to have that conversation this summer.
Yeah. I mean, there's a pretty damn good chance that his name is going to be in that conversation. That's how incredible of a signing it was. I think they're fully aware how much they need Isaiah Hartenstein. There's nothing that could happen in these next 2 games for them to change their opinion on how to approach Isaiah Hartenstein's future, barring some sort of crazy injury or something like that, obviously. But I don't think anything that could happen in these next 2 games, maybe the Pacers figure out some small little thing that they can exploit, and the Knicks are like, oh, you know what? We could use this extra sort of fringe player to help out with something. But I don't think it's going to be because of something they don't already know. Like, I think they're going to want to go out and try to get an extra backup ball handler behind Brunson next year. They're going to want to go out and make a big play for a star. They're going to want to go out and try to perpetuate the personalities they've already brought in, who continue this culture of like doggedness and hardworkingness and a lack of ego and all that kind of stuff. Like, they're going to want to do all of that already. They're going to want to give Jalen Brunson a lifetime contract. They're going to be lobbying the league to see if they can change the CBA just to make a provision, literally just to be able to give only Jalen Brunson a lifetime contract, and they're going to be like, can we pay him more than the max? Is that doable? Is there higher than the max? Because that's what they're going to want to do. Whether they trade for a star, whichever star they trade for, whether Julius Randle's in the deal, whether Warren Bogdanovich is there or not. I think these next two games have no effect. Whether they want to move forward with Mitchell Robinson or Isaiah Hartenstein, I don't think these next two games have any sort of effect on that. I think they have their sample. I think they're feeling really good about themselves as an organization. And I think rightfully so. This has become, and I'll tell you my personal opinion is that even if they lose these next two games, I would still classify this as a hell of a season.
Why would you do that? Here's why. Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Bojan Bogdanovic, OG Anunoby. That's why. And why these next two games, for as much as it will, of course, rip the heart out of people like me who root for this team. And I'm sure the people in the goes without saying, the people in the locker room, like, you can't, how could you reasonably classify it as anything else?
And look, I learned a lot when I was covering the Thunder from Sam Presti, who I think everybody would agree is one of the savviest GMs in the league. Maybe the savviest. If you want to say that, no one's ever really going to argue with you. And one of the things that Presti really hangs his hat on and talks about all the time in terms of a philosophy is you want to get to a place, and this is how he operates. You look at how they operate all the time. You want to get to a place where you can be really good in the present while still extending your window as much as possible. The point is not do what you can to win a title this year. Maybe that's the point for a coaching staff. But the point running an organization is not do what you can to win a title this year. The point is do whatever you can to maximize your window to give your chance the largest chance of winning a title over the next however many years. Mm-hmm. So that you're in as good of a position as you can be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. I think the Knicks have done that from a roster building standpoint. Mm-hmm. I think they've done that from a cultural standpoint. They've gotten their star. It's a lot easier to get the second than the first.
I was about to say, yeah.
And look, even if they make no moves this summer, they bring back the exact same roster to a T, which isn't going to happen in a literal sense. But let's just say they bring back the exact same roster to a T. They re-sign Hartenstein and OG and all that stuff. Alec Burks is there, just lingering. If they do that, and guys just stay healthy next year, Randle doesn't have a freak injury. Robinson has his bumps and bruises throughout the regular season, but he's healthy come the postseason. Bogdanovich has been healthy for his career, doesn't have a fluke injury in the playoffs that forced him to have surgery on his foot.
Yep.
OG Anunoby is healthy for a playoff run. That is in my opinion, that's a title contender.
That's a contender.
Right there.
I would agree with that.
And I think they would, I mean, look, if without a million of those guys, if they still make the Eastern Conference Finals, I think you can say that is a team that can win the East. And that is an incredible place to be in when you're trying to hunt. Like, because of Brunson's contract situation where he is going to get paid in 2025, 26, because of Randle's contract situation where he's going to get paid in 2025, 26, they have this year to really target that move for a star. And I think they're going to do that, whether they go out, whether they win these next two or they don't. I don't know. Maybe if they somehow win the title or something like that and have one of the most miraculous title run of any team in NBA history,
Fred, maybe
that changes things, but I don't think we should go there.
Don't send me to the hospital for something that lasts more than 4 hours.
Please, John, you already had to go to the hospital for that when you saw that Tibbs beach picture.
Well, the original one was from your Tibbs article. Okay, enough about things that send me to the hospital.
I'm just talking about the picture.
Just the picture's enough. I've already printed out several copies.
Josh Hart said,
"It's great."
I just want to be clear. Josh Hart said he had hot girl energy in that picture.
Well, we're going to save that topic for the next episode. For right now, we will bid adieu to Fred Katz of The Athletic and of Katz and Shoot fame. It is such a delight to see new episodes of Katz and Shoot pop up on my feed twice a week. I don't know if we're allowed to say who's going to be on the next episode for you.
I don't know. Ask my producer.
Caitlin Cooper, friend of the pod, is right now scheduled to be on Fred Katz's Katz and Shoot on Thursday. So subscribe to the Shoot tier and you'll be eligible to listen to said episode.
All of the episodes are great. Fred's great.
Producer's good.
Fred's writing is great. Fred's producer is great. Everything about Fred is great. Go follow Fred Katz on Twitter at Fred Katz, as it were, and read all of his stuff and listen to him. And is there anything else, Fred, before we get the hell out of here?
No, I'm going to have a story tomorrow on the Knicks attacking Halliburton. I'll probably have something for the next day if I don't collapse and keel over from exhaustion from the playoffs. I'm probably going to have something for the next day on Hartenstein. We didn't talk about Hartenstein's game.
No, I know we would have, but yeah,
outrageous,
out of insanity.
It wasn't just 12 offensive rebounds, man. Like they couldn't keep him off the boards to such a degree that by the end they were just fouling him on every rebound attempt.
That's what I said. I pointed out in the post game. Like if they counted those as rebounds, the ones that would have been rebounds had they not fouled him, he would have been over a 20 rebound game, which is not easy to do in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was, and he played an incredible defensive game. It was, might have probably the best game. I mean, considering the circumstances, I think it was the best game of his career. You know, I don't. Yeah, considering the circumstances, I mean, look, he got almost 2.5 times as many offensive rebounds as the entire Pacers team. That's outrageous. At 29% of the time that the Knicks missed the shot, Isaiah Hartenstein got the rebound.
Well, that'll be a nice, easy. Here's the most that we could give you with early bird rights. Decide what kind of contract structure you want, and hopefully nobody else blows them out of the water. But we'll talk about that this summer. But we have a lot more basketball to talk about in the meantime. Go read and follow and listen to Fred Katz. Thank you, Fred. And goodbye, Fred. You are the best. All right. Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast before we get out of here for today. Excited to talk to my buddy Zac Bright again from Autograph. He has some cool stuff to update us on with Autograph. But before any of that, how about these Knicks? Zac, I know you're not in New York, so you were not at the game 5 last night, but I am assuming that you watched from afar. Would that be a fair assumption?
I certainly did. I was there in spirit, Jonathan. And man, I don't think anyone had the Knicks winning by 30, game 5 by 30, huh? What a performance. And by the way, nice haircut, if I hadn't told you that earlier. But
if you had given me the choice of win by 30 or lose by 30, I definitely would have said win by 30. I'm not sure if you gave me the choice of win by 30 or win by 3. I would have picked win by 30, just because this Knicks team, if you go back, you could go back actually into another, you go back like a month and a half. It's been a while since they really put it to a team like that. So I was not expecting it for me.
Yeah, Jonathan, can we just talk about how, 4 of their top 8 of their rotation is out, and they're still able to beat the Indiana Pacers by 30? I mean, it's pretty, it's just a testament to the mentality, the culture. We've talked about this before, but, what they're doing and some of these numbers that I'm seeing from folks like yourself and other Knicks, influencers who are covering the team about what kind of numbers these guys are putting up and who they're in a class with is pretty compelling, pretty unbelievable.
I mean, you had, Dante's been in a little bit of a cold streak, but he was going flames coming out of his butt for a solid week and change there. I mean, what Jalen Brunson's doing is as I was just talking about with Fred, it's like Jalen is Jalen at this point. That's kind of all you could say. But up and down, Hartenstein rebounding, offensively rebounding the entire Pacer team, and with the minutes that Josh Hart has played, and then Deuce Pride coming in. Here's I'll give you a quirky stat. The Knicks have played, I think, 26 playoff games over the last decade. So since that mellow 54 win team, and over those 26 games, only 6 times has a guy come off the bench and scored at least 18 points. Alec Burks, 3 of those 6 times. How do you like that? And it's a guy that like was everybody left for dead, like a week ago. So you never know who it's going to come from.
I'm really happy for Alec, like, to have, to get back with the team. Like, he was always one of my favorite players. The guy can fill it up, obviously.
He's awesome.
Yeah. And, he just goes out there, he handles his business. He doesn't talk about it much. And he just, last night, aside from, clearly Brunson and probably Isaiah, I mean, you can't expect 18 from Burks off the bench last night. And so, he completely overperformed what they were expecting, and tip my hat to him. And frankly, Tibbs for keeping the next man up mentality and keeping these guys ready.
Yeah, I mean, we're well, at least I am a big Thibodeau fan over here. And like, look, give the organization credit. Like we always go back to this point, putting guys in the locker room and putting guys in at Tibbs' disposal who they know he is going to play. And like, I'm looking at the box score from last night. Like, yeah, there's Jalen Brunson with a plus 31, 44 points in 43 minutes. But who's right behind him? Deuce McBride plus 26 in 40 minutes. And, scores 17 points. Like they just find a way, whether it's guys who are supposed to be part of the rotation or not. So exciting time here in Knicks land. We obviously want to get one more, whether it's Friday night or if it needs to be on Sunday. But give me a little update because I haven't talked to you in a few weeks. So what's new? What's going on with Autograph as far as Knicks fans may be concerned?
Yeah, no, thanks for tapping me back in here. It's great to be back with you. We've continued to see a massive amount of activity and just enthusiasm in our Knicks community in the Autograph app. Use KFS. Go check it out if you're one of the few Knicks fans that are still not on the platform. But again, just for those who are new, Autograph is really setting out to reward Knicks fandom in a way that it hasn't been rewarded before, just by doing the same things that you're already doing as a Knicks fan, whether it be listening to this podcast, following your favorite influencers on social, reading blogs, and buying merch and buying tickets. We're actually doing a really cool promotion, whether it be Game 7, which we hope it's not on Sunday, or what will likely be Game 3 against the Celtics. We're doing 2 free tickets in the app. These tickets for the next Knicks home game. I won't even tell you what the actual price point is, but we just want to thank the Knicks fans. We want to thank you guys. And again, we're rewarding fans who come onto our platform and prove that they're real Knicks fans and are deserving to be rewarded. So absolutely stay tuned and get in the app as soon as possible. This offer for either Game 7 or Game 3 tickets in New York at the Mecca, at the Garden, being part of what hopefully is the rowdiest crowd yet. You'll want to be there. Check out the app. Use KFS.
I mean, it's going to be, if we get there, got one more. If we get there, it's going to be a crowd that has been bottling up that level of energy over the course of 25 years, because it's obviously been that long since we made the Eastern Conference Finals. I will just say, you talk about like the enthusiasm, the couple of times that you've given us stuff to be able to give away, and we've opened up our DMs and like, come on, slide in there to be eligible for this or that. Like the response has been, and it's frankly blown away me and Andrew. So I know there's a lot of people already on the app. I know there's a lot of people already starting to consume their content through Autograph. And I'll just, to piggyback on what you were just saying, for anybody who just like doesn't know the deal, once you get on there and you like whatever, it's reading a blog, reading my newsletter, listen to this podcast, listen to other podcasts, you just rack up coins, and then the more coins you get. So, again, this is stuff you're doing anyway, which is why I love it and why I was really excited to partner with you guys. Because
and one of the new things, Jonathan, that I wanted to come on and talk to you guys about is that we know that community is super important with fandom. And until recently, there hasn't been a major community element to our product. Clearly, it's on the roadmap. We know how fandom works, and we want to make the best fandom experience out there for all fans and reward fandom. But now in the app, we are doing, you can follow along the game with a bunch of Knicks fans in our fan zone. and
Oh,
watch
wow.
and communicate and engage with different plays that are happening in real time. So certainly more the first step toward, making a community element very visible in the app, and really being able to help Knicks fans meet other Knicks fans. Part of the app is, climbing the leaderboard and seeing where your fandom stacks up, and DMing ultimately, the number one Knicks fan and seeing what makes him tick. Right. So there's a lot of a lot of really cool things coming from Autograph. We're just excited to continue this ride with the Knicks, with you guys, for as long as this run lasts. But we hope it goes and goes and goes.
Well, listen, the nice thing about the NBA season is at this point, kind of never ends. So it's like it's going to, again, if the Knicks make the next round, it's really going to feel like there's no break, because you're going to turn around and blink and it's going to be the draft and free agency and trade season and all that. So if you're not in Autograph yet, it's still, not quite at the ground floor, but like you could still get in while the getting's good and start racking up coins and getting and finding your community. I love the community part too, because I feel like, there's a lot of different fan communities out there. It's just a matter of which one you're most comfortable in and go check it out and see what it's all about. This was great. I appreciate you coming on for a few minutes, Zach. Anything else before I let you go?
No, just go Knicks like always. I'll be watching. I'll actually be in Las Vegas this weekend for my cousins, for a little celebration for my cousin. So I'll be with some family watching on Friday, and you better believe I'll have my Knicks gear on. So looking forward to it, man. And always great to see you and Andrew, and excited to keep it rolling with you guys.
The pleasure is all mine. It's more of a pleasure when the last game that they played was a win, as is the case right now.
Vibes are immaculate again, right? You see me, the vibes are always immaculate, Jonathan. Come on.
I know, man. It's so funny how much it can ebb and flow, because if you saw me after game 3 or game 4, man, the vibes are not immaculate, but they're good now. Zac Bright of Autograph, thank you for coming on. Again, anybody who hasn't done so, go download the Autograph app. Use code KFS when you do download it, if you haven't already. And start getting rewarded for your fandom. Giddy up.
That's right. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And let's go Knicks.